Howdy, Joey here at School of Motion, and I want to welcome you to part one of this video series where we're going to be going through every single step of the process in the making of a short motion designy film. We're going to go through coming up with the idea, gathering reference materials, doing thumbnail sketches, cutting an animatic, modeling, texturing, rigging, animating, compositing, and sound design. It's going to be a very long series, and hopefully you're going to learn a ton. One of the things we're trying to do at School of Motion is push past the limitations of a single tutorial mindset where you kind of learn maybe a trick or two and maybe that's helpful, maybe it's not. Maybe you're just watching that tutorial because it's kind of entertaining. This is going to be a serious learning endeavor, and hopefully you get a lot out of it, and please let us know if you do. Don't forget to sign up for a free student account so you can grab the project files from this series, and there are a lot of them. You can follow along, you can mess around with the project files and see exactly what we're doing in these videos. So, thank you. Hopefully this goes well, fingers crossed, and here we go. So, where do you start with a project like this? It's just so big, it's massive, because you can make absolutely anything you want. There's no client, and there's only a deadline because you say there is, and the thing is done when you say it's done. Well, in very broad terms, there are basically two ways to approach something like this. Let's call them top down and bottom up. So bottom up is the way most things get made. You start with a concept, and then you move on to a script, maybe some style frames and mood boards, stuff like that. And then you storyboard the whole thing out, you cut an animatic, and maybe you find some music you like for a temp track, and then you animate, and then you composite, and you sound design, and you finish the thing. So you start very broad, and you end up refining and sharpening the piece along the way. But the start of the process is the initial concept. A different but no less valid way of doing this is to start at the top. Omoss talks about this a bit in episode 69 of the Collective podcast, which is awesome, by the way. Sometimes you have a vision in your head of some cool half-baked thing, and you just need to get that vision out. But, it's half-baked. It's totally without context. So you make up a context for it. Like maybe there's some cool artwork that inspired you, or a new tool you want to try out. So in a way, you can start with the execution and then back into a concept that makes sense. This is what I did for Giants. I've been recently inspired by low poly artwork. I follow Timothy J. Reynolds of turnisleftHome.com. It has such a hard URL to say. I follow Tim on Twitter, and I've become a big fan of his work and of his style. Low poly is pretty popular these days, and it really has some huge advantages if you decide to use it as a style. You can get away with a bit less modeling and texturing because you're really just going after the basic form of something, and with the right lighting and rendering and compositing, it can still be very, very beautiful. So I wanted to try creating a piece that told a bit of a story and had some emotion to it. So much of the work we do as motion designers these days is clever and well executed, but sort of emotionally dead inside. I mean, I love a good explainer video just as much as the next person, but I thought it would be a great creative challenge to try and make the viewer feel a little something, if I could pull it off. And finally, I wanted to try out X particles for Cinema 4D, which I know seems very shallow, just to try and shoehorn some emotional concept into an execution based around a desire to play with a new toy. But there it is. I really wanted to learn X particles. I started to have this vague vision in my head of a cool desert scene with like a low poly plant or a flower standing in the shadow of this enormous obstacle and then growing up the side of it to overcome this gigantic thing in its path. So, step one for me in these kinds of situations is just to saturate my brain with reference. I find that it helps me generate ideas when I can sift through a bunch of cool artwork. And I might get ideas about color palette or composition, or I might get derailed and end up with a new idea entirely. But here is my basic process. So my goal is to basically just flood my brain with images and stuff like that and try to come up with, basically something that resembles a mood board, something I can reference back to as I'm working on this. And really, in this initial stage, I also just want to start generating more ideas. So let's hop into Google Chrome here, my browser of choice. And you can see today, my goal, record inspiration videos. So we're going to go right to Pinterest. Now, I love Pinterest for this, and I'm going to show you why, all right? So a Pinterest account is free. If you don't have one, you can just sign up for free. And if I click on my account here, you can see I've already got some boards set up, okay? And the way Pinterest works is you create a board, and then you add references to that board. So let's create a new board here. And why don't we just call this, giant reference. Giant references demo. Okay, cool. And that's all I need. I don't need to fill out any of this other junk. I'm going to hit create board. All right. Now, here's what I love about Pinterest. It's basically like a stream of consciousness kind of thing for design and photography and stuff like that. So, all I know at this point is that I've got this vague thing in my head. There's a desert. All right. So let me just type in desert and just see what comes up, right? And not desserts, just desert, all right? And we'll see what pops up. And, all right, so apparently Pinterest doesn't know the 2S rule, so it's showing me pictures of desserts and deserts, but that's fine. So what I want to do is kind of go down here and just look, just let my eye just see stuff, right? Let's just catch some things. So first thing actually that jumped out at me was this photo. I don't even know what it is. I guess it's like you're inside a desert. You're looking up through these rock walls. It's beautiful. What's amazing about it is the color. I don't know anything about this photo, but I never would have thought to make the desert this color. But now that I've seen this photo, I think that might be cool. So I'm just going to hit pin it. And I'm going to make sure that I use the correct pin board here. So I have a giant reference board that I've already kind of started, but I'm going to show you guys how to start one from scratch. So giant references demo is the one we just made. I'm going to hit pin it. Excellent. Okay. So there you go. Now that one is in our board, right? And let's just keep going down and let's see what else jumps out at us. Okay, so this is another cool one because I kind of like the texture of the ground. You've got these nice cracks, and I also like the way, you've basically got like a rainbow here. I mean, you've got yellow transitioning to orange to red to purple, almost to blue. So I'm going to pin that as well. And, not everything has to look like the final product. This is just sort of color reference, right? So I know that I do want to try and do something in this low poly style. So let me go ahead and just type in low poly and see what pops up here. And there's a lot of stuff. I mean, this just goes on basically to infinity, right? I can just keep scrolling down and see an endless supply of low poly stuff. And since there's so much of it, I kind of need to be a little bit careful about what I pick. Like, this is beautiful, but it doesn't really speak to me. It doesn't resonate with what the image in my head looks like, And so that's kind of what I'm trying to reconcile here. I've got this movie in my head that only I can see, and I want to find images that can kind of help me pull that movie out of my brain. All right. So, something like this. This is very simple, but I like the contrast between the ground and these kind of mountains and the sky. I like the value contrast there. So I'm going to pin that as well. All right, and then we will do a couple more, just kind of see what else we can find here. Like, I love stuff like this, these really detailed. I mean, low poly, it's kind of it's an interesting style because it can actually be extremely detailed. It's just kind of a neat look. Like something like this, there's a lot of detail going on there, right? And you can see this is one of the things that's cool about Pinterest. If you click on that image, I should have known. Nick Campbell influencing, even when I'm trying not to look at Grayscale Gorilla, I'm looking at Grayscale Gorilla. So if I like this image though, I can just pin it. But if I click it, it's actually going to take me to the site where this image lives. All right, so so you can see, so now if I want to look at my pins, my board, I can actually go up to my account and I can find my my new board I made, which is over here, Giant References Demo, and I can just click on it. And sometimes you have to refresh, so I'm going to refresh my browser, and there it is. Okay, so now these are the references that I have pulled so far. Cool. And now just to show you, let me go back and actually look at the Giant reference, the Giant's reference board that I started before I started recording this tutorial. Because what's awesome about Pinterest to me is that it basically makes a mood board for you. And if you don't know what a mood board is, it's basically just a collection of images that you've swiped off of the internet usually. And it lets you just kind of gaze at them and get just a rough idea of what your piece might look like. It's sort of a vague way of describing something visually without having to create a whole bunch of artwork. You just go find something that looks like what you're seeing in your head. And so I want to call out, like, I didn't just look at low poly stuff. I also found, stuff like this. Just really interesting architecture, I mean, I know that there's going to be something in the desert. Maybe it's a mountain like this that's kind of the foe, and then the hero is going to be like a small little plant like this. And that's why I like this reference photo here, because you've got these tiny little camels, you've got this really imposing, beautiful mountain, and the lighting and all of that stuff. It's just gorgeous, right? These are pyramids, by the way. I know what they are. I know I just said mountain, but I want everyone to know I know these are pyramids. All right, so this is one way of using Pinterest. You can just search within Pinterest. Now, another cool thing you can do is you can install this little Chrome extension, okay? This is the Pinit Chrome extension. And if you Google Pinit Chrome extension, right? There it is, Pinit button, Chrome Web Store. If you're using the Chrome browser, I highly recommend you install this because it lets you do stuff like this. So I'm gonna go to another site that I love getting inspired by, which is From Up North. And basically, From Up North just curates really great stuff from all over the web. And they kind of have themes. So you've got typography one day, architecture the next, beautiful signage. That's awesome. And so, you can kind of go through here and, there's actually categories. And so let me take a look at maybe, like what would be helpful, maybe photography, right? Because I want this to feel very cinematic. And so like just being inspired by awesome compositions like this can be very helpful, right? So I like this photo. And once you install this extension, you actually get a little button on every photo you mouse over, and you can just click pin it. All right, this little pop-up happens, and then I can just tell it, put that in my Giant's reference board. Done. And that's it. Okay, and so now when I go back to Pinterest, this image is going to be there waiting for me. All right, so let me go down and see what else we got here. Yeah, I don't know. See, that is cool. I love that. Oh, see, this is what I mean. Like, so I have a very half-baked idea in my head, okay? The picture I just clicked and this picture don't have a lot in common other than there is a sky in them. But there's something about the graphicness of this, right? Like, this is so imposing. You're looking up at it, and it's very hard and angular, and I really like it. It just looks evil, and so, I know I'm going to need whatever is opposing this plant sort of flower thingy. That's going to need to look evil too, so I'm going to want something like this, and who knows, maybe it ends up being a building, and it's something like this, right? So I'm just going to kind of go down like this and try and find, a couple more things. So here's the big version of that image that I pulled. What else? Like I also know that I'm gonna need something probably I don't know, like plant-ish, right? So actually we can use Google for this too. We could just type in low poly plant, right? And just go to Google Images. This is another way you can use Pinterest. Once you've installed this plugin, you can just use the Google image search like this. Just kind of scroll down and see if anything jumps out. Now, low poly plants, I'm sure a lot of this stuff is designed for video games. It's not going to really work that well for my purposes, but you never know. You might see something really interesting that jumps out at you like this. Like, that's really interesting. What is that? It's a low poly tree. And to me, a low poly tree in my head, it has a lot less detail. This is actually sort of sculpted, and it looks like a tree, so it's cool. I'm going to pin that. All right, so you can pin literally anything once you've got this extension set up. It's really great. Let's see if there's anything else. I mean, there's stuff like that. That's kind of interesting. I like this texture. That's really beautiful. This is what's cool. Like when you take low poly stuff, but you apply good textures, good lighting, and you can tell there's like some ambient occlusion in here. It can still look really just visually very interesting. I'm going to pin this as well because that's kind of a neat texture maybe for like the way the ground could look or something like that. Cool. All right. So I am going to do a lot more pinning, but I wanted to show you guys how I use Pinterest in this way. And there's a million websites out there where you can find, really interesting, reference. I mean, Vimeo is another great one. You can go to Vimeo and just check your feed and get inspired that way and pin videos right off of Vimeo. So in this initial phase, I'm just trying to get inspired, and I'm going to go here back and just check out my my board one more time here. So this is the Giants reference board. Once Pinterest actually shows it to me. Come on, buddy. Here we go. All right, and I'm going to refresh it just to make sure everything shows up. And you can see I've got 14 pins in here, and I've just got this beautiful mood board, basically, already starting to inspire me. And I'll tell you, like, some of the things that I'm thinking in my brain right now. One of the things that's jumping out at me is, in my head, when I was envisioning this, I was really seeing a color palette, something like this. Now that I've pulled all this reference, I really like having a more reddish kind of color to the ground. It's really just pretty. And I like this too. I like this low poly look, but I also like this kind of shiny metallic texture. I wonder if there's a way to combine the two. So there's going to be a whole look development phase in this project as well. But this is just the reference gathering phase. So now I'm going to end up probably spending another hour or two just scouring the internet and trying to solidify stuff in my brain sack. Another thing that really inspires me and helps me come up with ideas is music. We're very fortunate at School of Motion to have an amazing relationship with Premium Beat, and I love their music library, so I often just start there and listen to a ton of music. At this point, I'm not sure what direction I want this to go in. Should it be really somber and moody? Or techie like a Skrillex song? Maybe it should be kind of indie, like the soundtrack from Juno or something. I actually like this track. It's sparse, and I think it would work well with some voiceover. Voiceover? Yeah, see, remember, at this point, all I've got is this vague movie starting to form in my brain, and I'm the only one that can see this movie at the moment. And as I look through all this reference and listen to different music tracks, my mind starts to fill in the gaps, kind of all by itself, and what I'm hearing is a voice. And not my voice. My voice sounds too young and goofy. I want a deeper, more serious voice. And I want that voice to be saying something really profound about, I don't know, something. I'll figure that out later. At this point, sometimes I like to start sketching. Now, I am not a very good illustrator, but it doesn't really matter because these drawings are just another method that I like to use to jog my creativity. Sometimes I just draw in Photoshop using a Wacom tablet. So the way that I want to use Photoshop right now, is basically as a drawing tool. And it's basically because I'm not a great illustrator, and you can hit undo when you're in Photoshop. So I just want to use this to kind of get my brain flowing a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to grab this built-in pencil brush, and I'm just going to use normal black color. And the reason I'm using something like this, which by the way, I'm using a Wacom tablet, so I actually have pressure sensitivity, which makes it a little bit easier to get more natural kind of thick and thin lines. And if you can draw, then you have a big leg up on people like me who can't draw as well. But I'm not gonna concern myself so much with the quality of the drawings. It's really more about trying to find some interesting angles, try to develop a little bit more of what this main character sort of plant thing is going to look like in my head. And so, typically if I'm doing something like this, I like to give myself rule of thirds guides. And so you can do that really easily. If you go up to View and say New Guide Layout, you can just leave it on one of the presets. And so you've got a preset called Thirds, and you basically just have 3 columns and 3 rows. You hit OK, and you get guides. So now you know where on the screen those sort of focal points are, right? When you're designing stuff, this is sort of Design 101, but it's always a good place to start with the rule of thirds. Don't put stuff right in the middle. Put it like on the third, and even better if you put it like in the bottom third and the left third, and it's kind of a more interesting place for things to be on screen. So now I've got these guides set up, and I want to start to get some of these images out of my head and onto Photoshop. So I'm going to rename this layer 01, because I know I'm going to be drawing multiple frames here. And so let's just start out, okay? I'm going to draw just a horizon line, and why not put it right on that third? A cool little trick is if you're drawing in Photoshop and you hold Shift, you can draw a straight line really easily. Okay, so now I've got a horizon line right on the third. That's fantastic. And let's just see what we like, see if we like that. So, there's going to be some sort of main character plant thing, and I kind of picture it like over here, and I don't know how big it is. I'm not sure what it looks like yet. I'm just going to kind of start doodling. This is more like gesture drawing a little bit. And there's going to be some sort of head to it, some kind of flower on the top, but I don't really know what that looks like yet. So I'm just going to kind of draw like a really rough kind of plant here, kind of coming up out of the ground. And its opponent is this big imposing something, right? It's a mountain. For some reason, I like the idea that it's, this is like a nice organic thing. And so whatever is kind of creating tension for it, creating the conflict in this short film is not organic looking. It's very straight. So maybe it's almost like a big, tall, like building or something, right? You've just got this big, imposing building. By the way, you can see it's very hard to draw good straight lines using a tablet. I'm hoping to get a Cintiq one of these days, because that would make stuff like this a lot easier. And so, I'm starting to already kind of see where this is going. I actually like the way this building kind of from a low angle looks. And it'd be cool if there was maybe like some terrain in the background, like some mountains that were almost, leading your eye up towards that building, right? So I'm going to sort of just roughly sketch those out as well. And again, I'm thinking this whole thing is going to be kind of done in this low poly. This is the undo, by the way, in this low poly style, right? And I want these to be a little taller so that it just naturally leads your eye up into this part of the frame where the building is. And now I need to figure out what this flower thing is going to kind of look like. And I know I want low poly, and I don't know. I don't want like a daisy kind of looking thing like this. That's going to be kind of silly. I want something a little bit more interesting, that maybe won't look so childlike and goofy. And so I'm just going to open up Google, and Google can be your best friend when you're doing stuff like this. Good afternoon, Joey. And I'm going to search for low poly flower, right? I mean, who the heck knows? It's Google. And I'm just going to open up Google Images, and I'm just going to let my eyes scan this stuff. And, this is how I like to work with reference sometimes. I like to have Google just curate a whole bunch of junk, and I'll just kind of, go down the page and just look for stuff that's interesting to me and see if something jumps out. And, sometimes like I'll see something like this. I'm like, that is beautiful. I love that. It has no place in this short film, but it is very cool. But I'm looking for a flower. Now, this is interesting because this is flower-ish, but it's not a flower. That's kind of cool. I like that. This kind of just polygons that are roughly like the inside of a flower. And then there's this, too. I don't know what this is. Let me click on this guy. So, all right, this is really interesting. And you can see that this is the geometry, and then this is maybe like the painted version of it. Maybe this is like for a video game or something. But I just like the way this looks, this low poly kind of tube-shaped flower. So maybe that's what's going to go on here. So maybe like, the actual shape of this thing, maybe there's going to be kind of like these curved petals like kind of coming out and overlapping, and some are kind of like bigger than others. And in the middle, maybe you get this cool like spiky kind of thing like this, right? And you've got just kind of curved stuff. And then there's kind of this like tube that it all kind of comes out of. And maybe that's the shape of the flower. That's kind of interesting. All right, so I'm just going to erase that very quickly. I'm going to put a layer back here of just white so that I can easily erase stuff. I'm going to lock that. All right, so I can erase stuff and not have to worry too much about seeing through. All right, so if that's the way it's going to look, then you've got kind of this like tube thing here, and I kind of want this to feel a little bit like a character, so I want it kind of leaning a little bit, right? And then out from there, you're going to have these little petals coming out, and again, I'm not worried about how crappy this drawing is. I'm more concerned with like, is this gonna work, right? And like the posture of this thing doesn't feel right to me now. I want it to be a little bit more hunched over like this, like that, and have like maybe a little leaf coming out, kind of where an arm would be. Right, it starts to feel a little bit more like a character. Cool. And then another thing I like to do at this point, I'm kind of working, like I said, I'm working backwards, so I might jump all over the place. Just whatever's going to kickstart my creativity here. I'm just gonna grab like a big normal soft brush, and I'm gonna call this value here. And what I'm gonna do is set the opacity of this brush down to like 20, and I'm just gonna lightly start to play with the value of this frame. Just to see, because value, if you're unfamiliar with that term, it's basically the brightness and the darkness of stuff, right? And I've got like some mountains that are kind of in the background, and those are kind of in the middle. This building is going to be dark, and then the sky is going to be bright, and then the flower is going to be dark. And maybe it would be cool if this. Here, let me go back to my pencil tool. So maybe it'd be cool if there was like a shadow being cast by this building that was like blocking out the sun for this flower, right? And maybe, I don't know, maybe that's the struggle. Maybe that's actually what's causing the problem for this flower. It's like the sun's over here and it can't get it. That's kind of interesting. Okay, so now I've got this frame, and it's kind of exciting to me because I like the angle of the building. I like the composition here, and I can sort of see this story a little bit more clearly now. This flower is being blocked by, the sun's being blocked by this building, and the flower wants it. So, the next thing I want to do, let me make a group for this, okay? Because I'm going to reuse this little setup. I've basically got my value, right? And then I've got my artwork here. And so I'm going to duplicate this. Let's make another frame. All right, 02. And I'm just going to delete everything on this value, and I'm going to make this totally white again. Now, the next shot that I want to kind of play with is the opposite of this. So this is low angle looking up at the building. Now I'd like a high angle looking down at the flower. And so this is where knowing a little bit about the language of film can help you. Because there are some rules that you need to follow in order to make this work as an edit, right? If we're cutting from this shot to another shot, I need to maintain the screen direction, basically, okay? And so what that means is the flower's on the left looking to the right, the building's on the right looking to the left. I need to maintain that. Another thing that's really important from an editorial standpoint is something called eye trace. So your eye is going to basically be alternating between the building and the flower. Okay, those are the two areas of contrast. And those are obviously the subjects of the shot. That's what you're going to be looking at. So I need to make sure that I don't ask your eye to jump somewhere completely different. So what I mean by that is, if I want this next shot to have the flower, but we're really far away from it and we're looking down at it, well, I don't want to put the flower like over here, really like far away. Let me up the opacity on this brush back up. I don't want the flower like over here, okay? Like we're really far away from the flower looking down at it. I don't want that, okay? Because watch, the flower's here, now it's here. That's gonna jar us, okay? So I don't want that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make this layer 50%, let me delete this value. Here we go. I made this layer here. I made this 50% opacity. And the way I did that, by the way, there's a great shortcut. If you have this arrow tool selected, which is the V key, and then on your number pad on your keyboard, you can just hit those numbers. 0 is 100. Look over here. 5 is 50. 1 is 10. And so you can just quickly play with the opacity of that layer. And what I want to do is set it to 50%. So now I can see exactly where that flower is going to be. All right, the flower is over here, which means when I'm looking down at it, you know, maybe it wants to be up here, kind of relatively in the same spot on screen. It doesn't have to be in exactly the same spot, but you know, if we're looking down at it, you know, it's going to be something like this, right? Okay, so there's our flower. Then I can set the opacity of this back to 100. There we go. And then I can draw the building in, all right? And so the building, again, the building's on the right side, so it's going to be on the right side. And maybe what we do is we're kind of like over the top of it, and we're at an angle where the, you know, the contours of that building are actually kind of pointing to that flower, right? That'd be kind of a nice thing. And it'd be cool, too, if there was like a little bit more detail to this building, if it wasn't just such a boring shape, you know? So we'll definitely like have like a little bit more going on, you know, maybe there's like different levels to it. You know, like once we get to the top, you can kind of see all that stuff, right? And then, you know, what else is happening? So you're going to have the shadow, which is going to be sort of like coming off the building like this, and it's going to kind of be like, you know, being cast like that. And you can tell here's where my my limited illustration ability comes into play. But basically here's the shadow, okay, of the building, and maybe something like that. And then, you know, off in the distance, you know, I don't really want to see a bunch of mountains and stuff here. Like maybe, you know, if you think about the angle we're looking at this, we probably won't see the horizon. We might if there's a really wide angle lens on our camera. So maybe the horizon would be like over here. So maybe up here you're starting to see some mountains and stuff. But really, most of the frame is empty, and we're really trying to get the audience to look at the building. So let me grab my big fat brush again, go to my value layer here, and let's just let's set the opacity to 20, right? And let's just start to figure out the values a little bit. So the shadow is going to be kind of dark like that. The plant's darker so we can see it. And then the side of this building could be really dark like this, all right? And really, the whole building, like we could sort of have like dark kind of sections of it like this, right? And then the desert floor could be sort of a medium kind of thing like this, and maybe these mountains are a little darker up here, okay? And let's just see, we can kind of practice cutting, like cut from this to this, and you can see now that it actually works. This is what's great too about doing it in Photoshop. You can really easily kind of preview your edits here. Now, looking at this, it occurs to me that I'm in the desert. I've got these wide vistas, and yet I'm working in a 16:9 frame, which that's standard for television, but movies and cinematic things are generally not 16:9. So I'm going to go back over to the internet here, and I'm going to type in, let's type in anamorphic ratio. Oh, look, there it is, first thing. Anamorphic format, right? So typically when you go see a movie, look at this, Dark Knight. So you go see a movie, they're shot at anamorphic scope, okay? Sometimes called CinemaScope. This is 16:9, and it's showing you what happens. This is actually a great little image. I'm going to have to share this. So when you see this, it makes it very clear. When you have a wider frame like this, you have your subject, but then you get to see a lot more of the background, which is really great for vertically oriented subjects like people or plants or buildings. So 2.35 to 1, that's the ratio that I need. So what does that actually translate into? Let me pull up my little calculator here. So I can take 1920 and divide it by 2.35, and that is the vertical size that I need this comp to be. So I'm going to just go up and change my canvas size. Let me select pixels here, and we'll do 1920, and I'm just going to round it to 820 to make it easier, okay? Okay, cool. So now I need to scale all this stuff down a little bit because I didn't really like frame it for this, but I like this. This is nifty, right? And here, let me just stretch out the values here just so we've got something to look at. But you can kind of see, yeah, this is gonna be a little bit more cinematic and cool. Let me up the opacity here, and I can kind of draw this stuff back in a little bit more. Yeah, I like this because this lets us see, and this also makes me realize I want the building to be a little thinner, I think, too. I want it to be a little bit more delicate, right? But we'll mess with that in Cinema 4D. But I like this framing so much more. It's so much more cinematic. You get to see the environment more, which makes this look smaller, and it makes this look bigger. All right, and then this shot, too, even works a lot better with this kind of aspect. And let me just kind of nudge these things down a little bit and play with the framing. Yeah, this is great. Okay, cool. All right, so as I'm doing this, I might end up using these for the animatic. I probably won't. I'm probably going to do a 3D animatic. But this is giving me just more fuel. It's making this whole abstract thing more clear in my head. All right, so let's do another frame. So let me just duplicate this little setup here, and we'll move it up to the top. We'll call it 03, and I'm going to make this white and delete all this, and I'm going to go to the white layer, grab my pencil, make sure I'm at 100%. So one of the things that would be cool would be to have kind of like a nice slow push into that flower, okay? So, we're going to have like the spiky kind of polygon-esque, center of this thing, right? And I'm not sure what that looks like yet, but I found that cool reference. And then we're going to have these cool kind of curled, kind of petals coming up out of the thing. And, maybe some of them are really thin and some of them are really fat. And we'll kind of arrange those in a nice way. And then once that's done, now you've got this cool kind of tube, this kind of cool tube shape that kind of comes off of the flower. And maybe you can kind of see like, a leaf down here or something like that, right? But you're looking at this. This is the face of this thing. And then behind it, so let's figure out, where do we want that horizon to be? We want to pretty much be level with this flower for a shot like this. A good buddy of mine, Ron Zeitler, amazing instructor at Ringling College of Art and Design, he likes to say that camera distance equals emotional distance. So we are very close to this flower right now. So that means we're kind of asking the audience to relate to it a little bit. And what we're also doing is we're going to put the camera pretty much at eye level with it. If we're looking down at something, then psychologically that kind of places us above that thing, and we're omnipotent almost looking down at it. And if we're looking up at something, psychologically it does something different, right? And so this is the language of cinema. So if you're at eye level with something, you're now on the same level. And if you're close to it, now emotionally you're connecting with it, okay? And so if this thing was at eye level, we can kind of cheat it a little bit, but I mean, the horizon's not going to be too far from the center of the frame. And so maybe we'll just kind of stick it here like this. And off in the distance, I want this flower to feel like it's being imposed upon, like it's this little, anti-hero, right? So what I want to do is kind of like make some, I don't know, almost like some cliffs back here or mountains or some kind of low poly thing. And again, I'm kind of structuring them deliberately so that they angle up like this. It's bringing your eye into the middle of the frame. And maybe these are too tall, but that's okay. That's another thing that it'd be easy to play around with in cinema to really nail that framing. And I also don't want things to be too symmetrical ever. So I'm gonna have this side be a little different than this side. Cool. And then I'm gonna just do a little bit of a value exploration here too. And again, you don't have to do any of these steps. I like to do the value exploration because it helps me figure out if this shot's gonna be too busy before I actually do it. And I'm not even sure what the story of this thing is yet, so I'm being a little bit premature here with everything. But all right, and I know I want the flower to be dark, and the flower's in the shadow of the building. So wouldn't it be cool? Maybe on this shot we see the flower and it's lit up, but then the shadow of the building falls across it. So maybe see, I love this. This is how doing this. It's like brainstorming with a pencil. Maybe what we see is that the shadow of the building, it only comes to here, but the sun is dipping in the horizon, so it's getting longer and longer. And then we cut and we're pushing in as the shadow falls over this and covers it up. And then we cut back to this, and this thing's totally dark and we're looking up at it. And then what? Then what's going to happen, right? And so anyway, so there's a lot of kind of story to figure out here, but this is already really helping me make this more real in my head. I kind of know how I want the flower to look a little bit now. This is kind of a good little style reference, even though it's very undeveloped. And I definitely want this to be a building. I now know that this makes sense. If this is a big, man-made looking structure with angles and stuff like that, then it's going to contrast really nicely with this kind of more delicate flower. Awesome. This worked out well. So as you saw, going into Photoshop really helped me figure out a lot of things about this piece. It's becoming clearer and clearer each time I jog my brain a little bit. And now I know that there's going to be this big building and this plant, and we sort of started to figure out what those things are going to look like. But, I need to know more specifically now, what is that building going to look like? Well, I'm not an architect, so I need to go and find some reference of tall, imposing buildings. So I look in all the usual places, and there's some great stuff out there. And what I like to do sometimes is just type weird stuff into Google and see what comes out. Like, how many people have ever typed in the search phrase, imposing building? So this image popped up, and I love it. It's really tall, and it's creepy in this sort of gothic way. So this is my building, or something close. So let's recap. There's going to be a desert, a plant/flower, a tall, evil building, cool music, and voiceover. And it's going to look low poly, be very cinematic, have some sort of emotional connection. A script sure would be helpful at this point. So I don't really want to write my own words for this. I'm not a writer by trade. And since this is going to be a short little piece, I'd rather tie it into something that already resonates with people. So I decided to try and find a quote to use. But first, I needed some kind of theme to go on. So thinking about the imaginary movie playing in my head, it struck me that this is sort of like a David and Goliath story, right? The tiny little plant can use its advantages to overcome a much larger foe. Maybe the plant needs the sun and it's being blocked by the building, and there's motivation for it. And so now let's go back to Google and let's try to find a quote. So in my searching, I found a couple of quotes from a book called, wait for it, David and Goliath. It was written by Malcolm Gladwell, who I am a big fan of his. He is brilliant and has written a couple of books that I really loved. And the quotes go like this. Giants are not what we think they are. The same qualities that appear to give them strength are often the sources of great weakness. The powerful are not as powerful as they seem, nor the weak as weak. Now you got to imagine that in a much deeper James Earl Jones-esque voice, which that's another thing I have to figure out, by the way. But when I read this, everything clicked. We see a tiny little plant in the desert, and its sun is getting blocked by this big, mean-looking building, and we naturally think the giant building is the strong one in this scenario, but really that's not true. Buildings can't move, and plants can move, and they can grow and adapt, and maybe this plant completely overwhelms the building in the end and perches on top of it victoriously, and this quote ties the whole thing together with brilliant music. Awesome. So, now what?